will return a Nazi-looted Klimt painting to its rightful owners.
The 1905 oil painting by Gustav Klimt titled Rose Bushes Under the Trees was stolen by the Nazis from a Jewish family in Austria more than 80 years ago. It has been hanging in the Musée d'Orsay here in Paris for decades, but will now be returned to the family of Norris Diazny, a Holocaust victim. The French culture minister said the decision to return the painting to its rightful owners, quote, illustrates our commitment to the duty of justice and reparation vis-a-vis plundered families. Inez de la Cuetara, ABC News, Paris.
A Florida woman and her 17-year-old daughter under arrest, accused of stealing votes for homecoming queen. The mom, Laura Carroll, is an assistant principal at another school. Police say Carroll and her daughter used her computer access to hack into students' accounts to cast fraudulent votes. The daughter was named 2020 homecoming queen. This is ABC News.
Cancel culture. Now they want to ban Dr. Seuss books. Watch Newsmax TV as it exposes cancel culture's dangerous agenda. Tune into Newsmax TV for blockbuster shows with Greg Kelly, Grant Stinchfield, Rob Schmidt, and more. Newsmax TV is on all major cable systems. If you don't get it, call your operator. Newsmax is free on smart TVs and Roku, YouTube, Zumo, and Pluto. And download the free Newsmax app on your phone and start watching. Millions already are. So should you.
Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
There is all kinds of lunacy going on. The madness of 2020.
Weekdays 11 to 2.
I'm just so fed up with these Democrats. It's unbelievable.
Get it straight from Chris Plant.
They're so hypocritical. It makes me sick.
It's the Chris Plant Show.
This has just got me going on.
And the left is waging war against the police in the United States.
Telling it like it is.
You should be thanked profusely for getting to the point. You're a voice of reason in the sea of idiots.
The Chris Plant Show. Weekdays 11 to 2. News Talk 1040 WHBO.
A Neighbor's Choice is live, and I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gronowski. So glad to be with you, live across FM and AM, podcast and video stream. Happy to have this time to learn together, to grow together, to look at the news like nobody else is doing. And that's because we're guided by a simple principle, that you ought to be in control of your life, that you ought to be respected as a human being, no matter who you are, no matter what your background, no matter what you've done in your life. You deserve dignity. You deserve to be treated the way people who want to treat you certain ways, they deserve to treat you the way they want to be treated. And you deserve the same treatment as well. And our culture today is addicted to politics, and politics is all about trying to get us to forget those basic principles that we know to be true in our hearts and our conscience, that we're raised with, many of us, by our elders. They teach us what's right and wrong. And then when we get inside of the bubble of groupthink that is political thinking, political ideology, it robs us of our common sense. It makes us feel like, well, I can make an exception here. Let's have this law. Let's tax these people. Let's regulate this behavior. Let's punish this income level. Let's control the world by being the world's policeman, right? All of these things are happening when we lose sight of how we know we're supposed to act when we're young, the way we're taught by our elders and our role models. And each of us know folks in our lives, whether they're our family or whether there are people that come in contact with us who have been influential in shaping us to be who we are today, the good and the bad. And we often take for granted those folks who help us with their role model to do the best that we have in us. Oftentimes, we want to take credit for all of the best attributes of us, and all of our flaws we want to ascribe to those, folks who have influenced us. But that's not the way it is. And so we have in our society today a culture which has lost its way because we don't want to talk honestly about the world as it is. We have attacked the idea of role models. We have attacked the idea of excellence. We have attacked the idea of the nuclear family for too long. And we have disparaged the idea of having boundaries and pursuing excellence in the things that we do. And that has real world consequences. In order for tyranny to thrive, it must have disintegrating families. In order for tyranny to take hold in the hearts and minds of people, it must disintegrate the family. This is not a truism. This is a deep, deep, fundamental truth. That doesn't mean that we idolize the family. It doesn't mean we turn it into another object of worship. But it means that we recognize that if we don't have a healthy framework for families to flourish in our society, all the other things will mean nothing. The economic liberty that we fight for to preserve, private property, private contract, innovation, you see, all these things that we cherish, justice, peace in the Middle East, peace all over the world that we want to strive towards, all of these things can only be accomplished when we have a society that honors and protects the family and cherishes the idea of having healthy boundaries for desire. And that's the war that we're in today. That's the war of our society, is that we have a lot of broken families, broken relationships, broken situations, because people haven't had the models they wanted to have. And so they're angry at the world. The left is angry at the right and what they see as the right, because they say, hey, you say that you're about family values, but you don't live up to your standards. You say you're about, a lot of people in conservative world say they're Christian. And so the left tends to say, well, if you're Christian, why do you act the way you do? Why do you bomb the countries that you voted to bomb? Why do you, do the bailouts? Why do you, lock everybody up and throw away the key for every victimless, nonviolent vice one can imagine? And so the left continues to do the opposite of what the right says is moral. The right says you should have boundaries. The right says that you should have families. The right says that you should have, limits to your personal desires in terms of, being restrained and being faithful, monogamy, these different foundational institutions. And the left says, I see nothing but hypocrisy all around, so I will do the opposite. I will make sacred the exact opposite of what conservative traditionalist folks say is good to cherish in society. So they're just doing the mere opposite, but in reality, they're still governed by whatever the conservative or traditionalist rival is doing. But all of this is a recipe for disaster. This is the heart of where we're at today. Our generation does not keep its word because our culture has not kept the word. The word is logos. The word is that it was spoken. The universe was spoken into existence, and that word means love. And love is unconditional love in its truest form. But we put all kinds of conditions onto our forms of love because we're afraid of being hurt. We're afraid that we'll be abandoned. We're afraid that we'll be taken advantage of. We're afraid that we'll be cut off in traffic, that we'll lose out on life. All of this is just fear of death. The fact that life has an expiration date and that you can't suspend that clock in some sense, at least in a chronological sense. And that eats at us, and it drives us to act in ways that we shouldn't. And it drives us to choose things that we shouldn't. It drives us to fantasize that we can solve our problems with power accumulation, grabbing that ring of power. grabbing that ultimate transcendent power and wielding it in a righteous way to atone for all the disappointments in life that we accumulate. But all of that will serve nothing for all of us. It would serve nothing but disaster, nothing but misery, nothing but brokenness. And while the culture is flailing about for some kind of moral boundaries as they take Dr. Seuss to the guillotine and Curious George to the guillotine, but they do nothing to stop the wars. They do nothing to stop the pillaging of our labor from the big banks and the big corporations and the big government agencies. They do nothing to resolve these problems because we are not in a situation where we have role models that teach us what's right, role models that don't just teach it, but live it. Because again, the reason why the left wants to reject the idea of boundaries and respect for differences and family and so forth is because they see so much hypocrisy all around them, and that becomes their argument for grievances against boundaries and restraint. I don't believe in family values, they might say, because look at you hypocrites. You vote for a Donald Trump who left, wife after wife, this after this. And so rather than saying, well, maybe human beings are fallen and maybe human beings are imperfect, they say, no, if you can't show me consistent role models for exemplifying the virtues that you say you believe society should cherish, then I want nothing to do but the opposite of those virtues. But in reality, they really do want those virtues. The reality is that the average leftist and liberal is not a monster, as some folks in the right would tell you, that they too cherish the family, that they too long for fathers, righteous fathers, and they long for healthy boundaries between parent and child. And they long for the boundaries of living a life of holiness and purity and not being caught up with nihilism, no meaning, no respect, no nothing. They don't want that. The average leftist or liberal, whatever you want to call this, ideological culture, really does crave the things that they say they hate. They just want to see folks actually exemplify them all the way. They don't want to see a conservative movement that says, oh, we love Jesus, but we'll bomb anybody who is in the way of our big banks and our big military industrial complex. They don't want that Jesus. Nobody wants that Jesus because it's a fake Jesus. It's not the real Jesus. They don't want a conservative movement that says they're for family values, but then they lock up people for life for first-time nonviolent offenses. They don't want that. They want the real deal to show up. That's all that the left is really looking for at the end of the day. They won't tell you that, and some folks, I guess, on the left have gotten to a point where maybe they physically do hate those things that are good. But the average person who's a leftist or a liberal, they want strong families. They want an end to the wars. They want an end and reconciliation of communities who have been destroyed by generations of nanny state oppression. The average leftist doesn't want to be surveilled and monitored just like you do. The average leftist, if they knew what was in the seed oils, like you may know, in our food supply, they wouldn't want to eat them either. The average leftist would not want to force someone to take a unapproved new drug that hasn't been FDA approved if they knew that it wasn't necessarily necessary. The average leftist is no different than you at the end of the day. They want the same things you want. And we have to be able to build that conversation, and we have to be the role models that exemplify the virtues that they say they hate, but they actually are desperately wanting to see modeled for them. Look at the story, not to put a personal note to it, but the recent passing of Ravi Zacharias, a man who was a model for a lot of folks in the evangelical Christian community. And then you hear about all those stories that come out afterwards. And I don't know the particulars of that situation, so I hate to even use names, but it does put illustrations that are helpful for us. Is that when someone has a situation like that, it doesn't mean that it discredits the good things and the true things that they said. But what happens is people are looking for role models. And if one person is exemplifying the way of imitating Jesus's role model, but then they do the opposite, and then the other person is exemplifying role modeling nihilism and they embrace nihilism, which is the crowd, which model are people going to be drawn towards? They're going to be drawn to the one that is consistent. If one person says, I am imitating Jesus, but they don't act like it, and then the other person says, I'm going to imitate nihilistic Nietzsche or something, right? And they pretty much live up to that, then the culture, everybody in the middle of those models, they're going to move towards that which is more consistent. And that's exactly what the left is, what's happening with the phenomenon of what is called the left. They are moving towards role models of nihilism and government nanny-state control because they don't see consistent role modeling of the things that we believe in, and virtue and family and restraint and integrity and authenticity. You can't be a pro-family movement or culture if you're sending your kids off to wars perpetually because there's $1 trillion to make a year off of these never-ending things. You can't say you're a pro-family or pro-life culture if you're sending kids to be physically assaulted and in harm's way in prison for every imaginable little petty nonviolent thing imaginable. Even if it's in jail for a week, that can ruin a kid's life forever. And who has been the one saying, lock them up all the time? The people who say they go to church the most. No wonder the left has a serious bone to pick with a lot of that. That doesn't mean that the left is right about their things. And that's, everybody wants to say, well, talk about them too. No, we talk about what's true. And what's true is, if we want to change this culture, if we want to move away from tyranny, we have to be the role models who consistently live out that which we seek. That doesn't mean we're going to be perfect, but we have to at least have some for people to look to in the public square. And unfortunately, some of the best role models never are exemplified in the public square, right? Because they don't seek after, things where they're going to be getting a lot of fame or attention. But we still have to push those stories to the forefront so that people have something to look for and imitate so that they can have something to strive towards excellence. We'll take a break and return. You can call us at 727-587-1040. That's 727-587-1040, or drop us a comment on YouTube. Our YouTube video live stream is up at David Granosky, and we'll be back in just a moment after this short break. David Granosky here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals, join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187, Equal Housing Lender.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents. The law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
A Neighbor's Choice returns. So one of the things that you'll see common on the, let's say, the conservative right, when they talk about the black community, they say, you know, the big problem of the black community is they'll mention the rates of fatherlessness, right? And they usually, the line is that they'll say, you know, that the Lyndon B. Johnson, Great Society and the welfare system systematically destroyed so many of the fathers in the home of the black community. And there's truth there, but it's not the full story, you see. And until we understand how to communicate the full story about all of these different situations in our culture, we're not going to be able to have any real breakthrough in understanding amongst folks. Because it's not a simple narrative, one narrative, and that's the only level of what happened. Just get rid of welfare and that'll solve it. No, that's not at all the full picture. That's a part of it. But the other thing that was happening in the 60s was the ramping up of the drug war. And so if you talk to libertarians, they'll emphasize maybe, hey, we should get rid of the drug war. And again, there's a huge part of the story that's connected to that the drug war was often used to weaponize political power to attack folks who were vulnerable because of perhaps being a minority or living in a community where there wasn't a lot of resources for a variety of reasons, maybe the rigged trade deals, the rigged regulations that created corporatism, the Federal Reserve System, which punishes those who are lower income, those who are on fixed incomes the most because it dilutes the purchasing power of their dollar when they're creating money, trillions of dollars in credit and giving it to their friends in Wall Street and government agencies. So the drug war has a big part to play. That fatherlessness is not just welfare incentives. It's also you locking people up for every nonviolent crime, and you're going after communities that are easier to deal with because you go to the rich communities and they have expensive attorneys that make the trials a little harder to deal with. Right? That's probably what a lot of these, drug war things are all about, isn't it? Of course, that gets conflated with systemic racism, but at the end of the day, it is a disparate outcome. And it's something that needs to be addressed. And to be able to say, oh, no problem. No, then you're not Christ-like. You see, Christ-like, Jesus says God desires mercy, not sacrifice. Where does he stutter about that? Where does he move and say, no, actually, I'm not meaning that literally. Who told you to take that literally? No, that's exactly what he means. God desires mercy, not sacrifice. And when you sacrifice your neighbor into the belly of a very vicious prison system for victimless, nonviolent choices. What you're doing is you're participating in the same old sacrifice that Jesus came to confront. You're sacrificing your neighbor because you're afraid that if I allow them to have their freedom to do things that I'm afraid of, personal vices or whatever, that somehow it'll destroy the whole society. But as I've told you before, perhaps you've heard me say this, that Jesus freed the woman who was accused of adultery. They were about to stone her, and I would submit to you that adultery has done more to destroy communities in the world, destroy families, create poverty and crime. Breaking families apart with adultery has done more of a number on society than any drug use ever has. And yet, if Jesus could spare the life of a woman accused of adultery, how much more so could you spare the life of a neighbor accused of a drug or some other vice that oftentimes is the occasion for destroying families for generations? That doesn't mean we acknowledge the choice as good or right. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what is the proper way to treat our neighbor. Is it to use violence and sacrifice, or is it to use mercy? That's a fundamental question at the heart of our culture at this moment, and we have to address it. We have to wrestle with that question. We'll take a break and return in just a moment.
Politics these days are just that, politics. Pathetic discussions about things that don't matter, while the pandemic, crime, and economic disparity march on. That's why you need a balanced approach to news, business, and entertainment in the state of Florida. That publication is newstalkflorida.com. Whether it's the White House, the courthouse, or your neighbor's house, News Talk Florida has the sources, articles, video, and audio that will be a must daily check-in from your laptop or mobile device. Take a look at newstalkflorida.com. Today's news and entertainment with a Florida slant.
President Biden on the road today touting his COVID relief package, stopping at a small business in Chester, Pennsylvania. The administration, meantime, facing criticism about the growing influx of unaccompanied minors in U.S. custody.
Republican Senator John Kennedy saying the president has in effect left the southern border open.
The Biden administration doesn't want to enforce America's immigration laws.
Last week, White House spokesperson Jen Psaki insisted they are protecting migrant children, but telling others they must wait. Andy Field, ABC News, Washington.
In Minneapolis, 9 jurors have been seated so far in the trial of Derek Chauvin. The former police officer is charged with the murder of George Floyd. Defense attorney Eric Nelson asking the judge for a change of venue due to the city settling a civil death lawsuit of $27 million with Floyd's family last week, claiming it will taint the jury. The judge says he will consider that request. I'm Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Welcome back to Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, David Gronowski. You can call in at 727-587-1040. We'll open the line, 727-587-1040. If you have a comment about what we've been talking about. I've been talking about the spiritual warfare that we have to engage in if we're going to get, and that sounds, that spooks people, but I don't care, you know. You can try to placate people with, use a different term, and there's a time to do that. But I do want to be open and transparent that there is a spiritual warfare behind the cultural and the political and the tyrannical situation that we find ourselves in. You know, that whole story about Tucker Carlson getting attacked because he said, I don't know if we should be doing, encouraging women who are pregnant to be on the front lines of war. That doesn't mean that those people are less than. Why do we have to have this obsession that in order to be somehow worthy or valuable, you must be exactly undifferentiated from anybody else? That is not the value that human beings get value from. The idea of being pregnant is a sacred thing for families and for the whole world, the whole humanity. And you don't do that. You don't. I don't care what they say. I don't care what words, stupid little words they want to use to try to cover their ears up to the truth. It's never going to be okay for a society to send women who are pregnant with child in the front lines of shooting and being shot at. That doesn't mean that they're less than. Only someone who's totally twisted up could even configure that. Who taught people this stuff? Think about that. Where did you get the notion that if we're not exactly completely 100% amorphous blobs, then someone's oppressed? Where did that come from? I know, I have an idea about where it came from. It came from a mutation, a distortion of our Christian tradition, which treated people to, first shall be last, last shall be first. This stuff gets twisted and mutated into ideologies that were baked in for hundreds of years, moving in this direction. Just because there are oppressive things in the past and oppressive things all around us doesn't mean that having differentiation between a pregnant woman and a warrior is not a good thing. There should be a distinction. But see, the left is able to push this. Why? Because what is their opposition? Think about this for a moment. People say that, people who are conservative traditional are the ones that say we represent Jesus. Jesus doesn't go to war and looking for, preemptive violence, preemptive strikes. He doesn't do that. I don't care if you don't like Jesus or not. If you're saying that I'm a Christian, that means I'm a little imitator of Jesus. I'm trying to imitate Jesus' whole way of dealing with things. One really low-hanging fruit about doing that is that you don't go off to war recklessly and for whatever reason other than true, real self-defense, as the just war doctrine would say, just war theory. And even that may not go far enough, but the point is at least you go there, right? And so how can people, take conservatives and traditionalists seriously when they say, hey, maybe we shouldn't put pregnant women on the front lines to fight Al-Qaeda? Well, I guess we're supposed to fight with Al-Qaeda right now. Is that what we're supposed to do with Syria? That's part of the war on terror, right? That's the genius plans that the Pentagon has, that we're supposed to fighting on the same side as the Syrian Al-Qaeda branch. Is that what it means? To fight off Assad, who's the one guy who's providing some protections for the ancient Christian communities there. That's what America stands for. Okay, got it. But so we're not supposed to be sending, though, women who are pregnant on the front lines of war for a reason. That's a sacred role, to give life. And that's okay that that's different. We don't have to lose our mind in the madness of undifferentiation, where we have to say people who are, what is the term now? You can't say pregnant mothers. You're going to say people who are pregnant. This dystopian nightmare that we're entering into in real time. It doesn't have to be this way. We don't have to go down this way. But it's going to take more than just talking about policies and politicians. What a waste of time. This is so much more richer. This is so much more beneficial for our communities. This is why I'm doing this right now as a radio broadcaster in your community, Tampa Bay, wherever you are. You're driving right now, or maybe you're in the car, maybe you're at the gym. These are the conversations we need to be having right now. Not to try to dunk on people or to take cheap shots, but not to be fake and being like, oh yeah, I'm above the fray, I'm not going to make a stance either way. No, that's weak too. We don't need that either. We just need to be able to have honest, blunt, direct conversations with wisdom about who we are as a people. Who's having those conversations right now? You can't rely on politicians. They're just trying to get elected. And they've got an impenetrable wall of special interests surrounding their efforts to get elected. And you're not invited to that wall unless you're a prop at a rally. In which case, if you are, you might be positioned in a way that the cameras can see you. Other than that, you don't really have much value for them, other than, you're just a representative of an amorphous blob of humanity. But who owns the politicians or the special interests that profit from the decayed status quo? But you cannot fix the culture by just going to the politics and trimming off the tax code and trimming off this and this and that. You have to have these conversations normalized again in the public square, which is what I'm doing right now. That's why I'm not on a religious broadcast station. I'm on public talk radio stations for a reason, because this is a conversation that cannot be ghettoized by religion. It needs to be, and I'm not saying that in a flippant way. I mean that directly. We have to be able to have these conversations in the public square, in the secular space, if it's going to make any headway at all, if it's going to make any progress. We've got to be able to have these honest conversations. And that means that it's okay that we have a sacred space for women who are pregnant. We don't have to say, no, you get to go fight on a war. But you cannot have that if you don't have the moral foundation of consistently opposing immoral wars. You see? The left says, don't tell us anything about protecting women on the front lines of war when you guys have been sending troops off to fight every conflict that's elective and unnecessary that you can imagine. By what standard is the question the left is asking the conservatives and traditionalists of our society? By what standard should we care about your invocation of moral authority on a subject matter? Since when have you ever lived up to the Prince of Peace as a collective culture? Time and time again, the culture looks out. What does the house of Jesus say? And the house of Jesus's leadership tells them, yeah, let's go to war. Or yeah, let's do banker bailouts. Let's do socialism, nanny state, gobbledygook nonsense. Let's take from people by force. Jesus doesn't take by force, but he also doesn't go to war endlessly for no reason. And that's been the big sin of the right. One of the things the right has not wanted to truly reconcile with. They've moved away from endless wars on some sense because of Trump and Ron Paul before him, but they have not fully been able to say, you know what, that was really wrong, not just because the Iraq war went bad, but that we don't send people to be in the moment of losing their life based on unnecessary, non-defensive reasons. And when you consistently use your mouth to lie and send people into mortal danger where they lose their life or they lose their limb and they lose their family member and they lose their dad and they lose their best buddy and they lose their conscience or they get warped in their hearts with moral injury and different things that affect them and PTSD, when you do all that so flippantly and so carelessly and then say, oh, we're the party of family values, nobody will take you seriously and they will do the opposite of everything you say because you're not worth imitating. So you cannot have it so that if you're pushing for endless wars, but then you want to tell people, hey, yeah, let's not put pregnant women on the front lines of combat. They're not going to buy it. You've already lost the whole principle before. Now, if you are consistent, and not just consistent in word, but you try to live it out as best as possible, that's attractive. People will come to that. People will be drawn to that. It's hard. But being consistently against war, consistently against bailouts, consistently against the rigged trade deals manufactured by government special interests and corporate special interests, being consistently against corporate welfare, not prioritizing cutting welfare first, but cutting the corporate welfare first. And not just cut. See, that's the only thing Republicans ever talk, cut. How do you win something by saying cut? That's not a winning message. A winning message is when you say, well, what are we going to give? What are we going to provide? How can we create an environment in which people are empowered to give in their own community voluntarily with their time, not just with, donating of their time or donating of money at a charity, but actually donating their business sense, their common sense to create wealth, to create value for people, give people jobs, give people dignity. These are the things we need to be doing. But you can't have this hypocritical message where you say, oh, you should pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, but then people can go to prison for life for small little petty nonviolent choices. That's not going to help anybody. That's not going to help heal families and restore. How many kids cry out wondering, where is daddy? Where is mama? in prison for years and years and years. And what happens in those prisons? How many families have been affected by that? How many children and how many young men and women have scars because of seeing their family torn apart because of a reckless nanny state action like a drug war? How many cry out right now with no one coming to their aid? When is mom coming home? It's been decades. She was young when she made her mistake. She was with the wrong crew. She wasn't even doing the drug or whatever, and she's thrown away like a property of the state, like an Orwellian nightmare, treated as a number, numbered among the transgressors, numbered among the violent when they have no violent background. You can't do that to your neighbor generation after generation and then tell them, hey, you need to be a pro-family person. That's lukewarm stuff. That's not principled stuff. That's not attractive stuff. It's mealy mouth stuff. And that's what the left has been drawing its energy, repudiating it, because they want the real deal. They want real leadership of role models. They want real consistency of family values all the way through. When they hear someone say they're pro-life, they don't want to hear, okay, only pro-life with unborn kids, but what about the kids locked up forever? What about the kids sent over to war based on false information? They deserve life too. How about the foreign lives that are lost? Madeleine Albright said, right? Collateral damage, yes, it's worth it. 500,000 Iraqi kids starved under Clinton with the sanctions. How many kids are starved under the Iranian sanctions? Their lives matter too. We can't take our cues from the mainstream corporate press about who's, you can only care about this or that or this thing. No, you must always protect and defend life, even if it's a country that doesn't get any political sway. A country like Libya, a country like Syria, a country like Yemen, their lives matter. Their lives are sacred. They should not be torn apart by sanctions and starvations or bombs and drone strikes. And when we start to love life and we take care of our neighbor like this, it will be a different message. It will be a different collective role modeling that will be taking place that will get people to start looking and taking a second look at what it means to have a good life, what it means to have a just society, and what it means to have an opportunity to reach across the aisle or reach across the town and become friends with people who you thought you couldn't create unity with. We can do it, but it has to be on a story that we can bind ourselves together that's based on love and that's based on mercy, not sacrifice. We'll take a break and be back in just a moment. I'm David Gronowski. You can call in at 727-587-1040. That's 727-587-1040. Or email me hello@aneighborschoice.com. We'll return in just a moment. Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality, grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved two people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back.
FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
David Gronowski here. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. 727-587-1040 is the number to call in. Looking at some of these headlines here in the news that are making the rounds around the internet. There's a headline from CNBC from 2019 that says border crossings are at record lows as Trump declares a national emergency to build a wall. And then fast forward till this week, in the New York Post, it says Pelosi blames border crisis on Biden inheriting a broken system from Trump. So, there's always this blame game that is the dominant thing of everything in politics. And it doesn't serve us any interest, but it's only there. They only have government so bloated and big because we have abandoned the foundations of culture. We've abandoned the foundations of taking what we say we believe seriously and living it out. Not for glory, not for a paycheck or whatever, but just living it out because it's the right way to go, because it is the true way of living. Because our desires are illusions. So much of what we think we desire, we don't actually desire. It's just stuff that other people do or say or want or model for us that we think is cool because we want to fit in or catch up with whatever it is they seem to have. But we don't want to recognize that because we're very prideful species. We tend to be. Another headline in MSN, Bloomberg, it says drug makers push vaccines for kids amid debate over need for shot. The article says that children have fared better than adults in the coronavirus pandemic, a fact that makes the development of vaccines for them a unique effort in the annals of medical science. But they, I guess, want to push this on to children, even though it doesn't seem to be something that would be necessary. But that's what government does. They do unnecessary things that make them look good for the friends that they have in giant corporations. And they may mean well, they may mean well, but they're meaning a lot of groupthink as well too. And they don't understand what they don't know. Yahoo Finance says Google's Nest adds sleep tracking and new health tech foray. Google's Nest unit is expanding into health technology with a feature that tracks sleep patterns, offering a potential for new revenue stream, but also raising privacy concerns. It will have sleep sensing that monitors the breathing and movement of a person sleeping next to the screen without a camera or needing to wear a device in bed. So they're going to report you if you talk in your sleep and say something that's against the government. YouTube already has a problem with anybody challenging big pharma or big military machine, war machine. What are they going to do with that? I'd be surprised if that doesn't get used and abused in some way. Story in trust.org by Reuters says rebel priests defy Vatican, vow to bless same-sex couples. A dissident band of Roman Catholic priests leading a disobedience campaign against the Vatican said on Tuesday that they would carry on blessing same-sex couples in defiance of church orders. See, when you get consumed with the brokenness and the inability for people to live out role models consistently, it turns people to want to embrace no boundaries, no distinctions. And that's just because they don't see the original model consistently lived out in their community, in their life. Here's another story real quick. We have Yahoo News. It's the LA Times story. And Yahoo News says Biden looks to shots in arms and money in pockets to reignite faith in government. He says help is here and hope is here in real, intangible ways. As he kicks off his $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief package. In the next 10 days, he says we'll reach two giant goals, 100 million shots in people's arms and 100 million checks in people's pockets. Nice little focus group marketing tagline, ain't going to amount to anything good. You don't have government mandate medicine. And you don't have government print money out of thin air. It doesn't work. But see how it's all based on faith in government? Who here has been telling you that the state is a religion? That's not a metaphor. It's not like a religion. It is a religion. And they demand worship and they demand faith. And that's what the media, they are folks who are dogmatically insistent on proselytizing you to accept the same all-consuming faith and trust in the state of mere mortals. Like they have, or at least they say they have. So you don't forget that that's a religious phenomenon that we see here. And the language sometimes is consistent with that reality, like in that story. Gavin Newsom admits that on The View, this is in Mediaite, that he's spooked by the push to recall him. He says, of course I'm worried. As the recall effort grows in California to repeal him as their governor. But again, if there's not a fundamental cultural transformation, and with that, a foundational move away from the model of governance that we have today, one in which government is supposed to be our nanny that takes care of us from cradle to grave and tells us what we're allowed to put in our body and what we're allowed to think and say and do and what we're allowed to do with our business, and you have to have permission to fish, permission to do this, permission to have a business, permission to do this, on and on and on. If we're not going to fundamentally challenge and move away from that model of governance, it doesn't matter who you recall. Yes, recall him, but don't replace him with just another nanny state wannabe God who doesn't know what you need and doesn't know how to manage your life and doesn't know what the best medicine is and won't tell you if they know, because the special interests that control government won't allow folks to just tell the truth and be candid. These agencies are funded by the companies that they're supposed to be like neutral arbiters about. They don't, it's just how it is. You think the Department of Agriculture and the United States government is going to tell you the truth about seed oils? No. Who built the Department of Agriculture? Who's their clients? Big Ag. Another story, Matt Taibbi talks about in the nationalpost.com that the Sovietization of the American press, the transformation from phony objectivity to open one-party orthodoxy hasn't been an improvement, he says. This was published just 5 hours ago. He says, I collect Soviet newspapers. Years ago, I used to travel to Moscow's Izmailovsky flea market every few weeks, hooking up with a dealer who crisscrossed the country, digging in front pages from the Cold War era. I have Izvestia's celebration of Gagarin's flight, a Pravda account of a 1938 show trial, even an ancient copy of Ognoyik with Trotsky on the cover that someone must have taken a risk to keep. These relics with dramatic block fonts and red highlights are cool pieces of history. Not so cool the writing. Soviet newspapers were wrought with such anvil shamelessness that it's difficult to imagine anyone ever read them without laughing. A good Soviet could write almost any Pravda headline in advance. What else but, quote, a mighty demonstration of the union of the party and the people, fit the day after the Supreme Soviet elections. What news could come from the Spanish Civil War but success of the Republican fleet? Who could earn an obit headline but a faithful son of the party? Reality in Soviet news was 100% binary, with all people either heroes or villains, and the villains all in league with one another. Other ideas were not represented except to be attacked and deconstructed. Also, since anything good was all good, politicians were not described as people at all, but as paragons of the limitless virtue. 95% of most issues of Pravda or Izvestia were just names of party leaders surrounded by lists of applause words like glittering and foolhardy and wise and mighty and courageous, in complete moral, political union with the people, etc. Some of the U.S. headlines: Biden stimulus showers money on Americans, sharply cutting poverty. Champion of the middle class comes to the aid of the poor. Biden's historic victory for America. It is very Pravda-like. Like I said, the state worship of the media is out of control. They worship this state as their God. And many of us do as well, and we have to stop it. It's a false God. It won't give us what it says it's going to give us. We'll be back in just a moment with Detective John Baeza. You don't want to miss this hour discussion. It's fascinating stuff. But for now, Godspeed.
Your home for news, talk, and information. 1040 WHBO Pinellas Park, Tampa Bay's all new News Talk 1040.
It's the only way I get news.
From ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. President Biden in Pennsylvania today, his first stop on a nationwide tour to highlight the benefits of his COVID rescue package. He met with small business owners in Chester today.
It's going to bring immediate relief, $1,400 to 85% of the American public. I said yesterday, we're going to get 100 million shots in people's arms within the first 60 days of my administration, and 100 million checks out.
The White House also announcing the president will hold his first solo press briefing on March 25th. The Biden administration facing criticism on the growing number of migrants at the southern border, where more than 13,000 unaccompanied minors are now in U.S. custody. ABC's Karen Travers has more.
The White House says there are not many options for what they can do right now. The press secretary, Jen Psaki, said yesterday that they're getting a lot of criticism for this, but they're not hearing solutions offered from their critics. The administration keeps saying that what they're trying to do is connect these children with families who are here in the United States already, try to connect them with sponsors while they await for their cases. But it's complicated and it takes a long time.
A new report by the U.S. intelligence agencies released their findings on the 2020 election and claims of foreign hacking.
The Director of National Intelligence Office declassified its report on 2020 election foreign meddling and concluded no outside government tried to change any technical part of the U.S. voting process. The report does say that Russia sought to hurt then-candidate Joe Biden's election prospects and that Iran worked to undercut then-President Trump, but that the actual physical voting process was secure.
ABC's Andy Field. If you're searching for a doggy, there's a list you may want to check out. The French Bulldog is getting a leg up on the competition when it comes to America's favorite purebred pooch. The American Kennel Club rankings putting the French Bulldog second, right behind the longtime love of Labrador Retrievers. You're listening to ABC News.
It's all about the nose. It's your air filter, the first line of defense against bacteria and viruses. If too many germs get stuck in your nose, guess what? You get sick. That's why it's so important to keep your nose clean, just like washing your hands. Nasal irrigation gets rid of germs by rinsing the nasal cavity, but neti pots are hard to use and, frankly, kind of gross. Now there's a better way to keep your nose clean and help your body protect itself. It's called Navage Nasal Care. Navage uses powered suction to flush out allergens, mucus, bacteria, and viruses. Millions use Navage for fast, all-natural relief from sinus congestion and allergies, and to breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and feel healthier without drugs. Navage is easy to use, affordable, and comes with an absolute guarantee of satisfaction. You wash your hands and brush your teeth every day. Now it's time to start cleaning your nose with Navage. At Navage.com, CVS, Walgreens, Bed Bath, Target, and Rite Aid. Navage, Navage. Clean nose, healthy life.
Pfizer speeding up its COVID-19 vaccine delivery to the EU.
EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen revealing on Twitter the EU will be receiving over 200 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine in the second quarter of 2021. That's 10 million more than was initially expected. Von der Leyen writing, quote, "It will give member states room to maneuver and possibly fill gaps in deliveries," end quote. This comes as a string of EU countries have temporarily suspended use of the AstraZeneca vaccine over fears of blood clots, though there is currently no evidence linking the jab to the small number of reported cases. Inez de la Cuetara, ABC News, Paris.
Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin in Tokyo says the U.S. and Japan are united against Chinese aggression.
I know Japan shares our concerns with China's destabilizing actions. And as I have said before, China is a pacing challenge for the Department of Defense.
Japan considers China's escalating maritime activity in the region a security threat. A battle brewing over meat. Colorado's governor proclaiming March 20th as Meat Out Day, meant to encourage meat eaters to consider a vegan diet. But the governor in Nebraska says getting rid of meat is a direct attack Nebraskans' way of life. So he's declaring March 20th meat on the menu day to support his state's beef industry. This is ABC News.
Are you more than $10,000 in debt? Feel like you're on a never-ending treadmill, staying in one place and never getting ahead with those minimum payments? You feel like there is no way out? Don't let the credit card companies bully you anymore. There are programs in place to help you get free of debt, and you don't have to pay the entire amount you owe. The program at Total Financial Freedom can help you get debt-free in months instead of decades. Call Total Financial now at 800-533-6605. That's 800-533-6605.
Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Hello, this is David Kronosky with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
You can't have a fresh outlook on the new year if you're staring through a chipped or cracked windshield. Autoglass America will fix it and give you up to $150 cash back to help pay holiday bills. With qualifying insurance, we'll come to you with mobile service and install a premium quality replacement with a lifetime warranty at no cost to you. Get a great outlook on the new year with a new windshield and New Year's cash from Autoglass America. 813-96-GLASS, 813-96-GLASS.
From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, your neighbor, David Kronosky. So glad to be with you again across FM and AM. Happy to have this time with you. Video stream, podcast audiences. We always enjoy all the comments. We get so many great emails, and we don't get to all of them because we have all these topics and guests and things that we have to get to, but it's always a pleasure to hear from our audience. So informative, so inspiring, some of the things that they send. And that's always great to have that, right? We need positivity. We need people working together to solve problems. We've got a lot of problems, but we've got a lot of solutions. We've got a lot of good things too. And one of the things that I like to do is look at the reality of our justice system and to look at how the law enforcement aspect of it goes in all the different, events and stories that we are dealing with. And one of the things that we're dealing with is a problem with disputes over how we do policing, how we do the enforcement of the laws that we have. I tend to focus on how we've got a lot of bad laws that we need to get off the books. But we also need to look at how we do policing as well. And joining me now is a friend of the program. He's a retired detective. He's someone who has spent a lot of time thinking long and hard, not just thinking about it, publishing papers about how we should do policing, how we should do, interviews, all these different things. We have with us Detective John Baeza. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Dave?
I'm doing good as well, and it's great to have you on the program. Talk about different issues in the news today. I want to start off with something. We have our audience, of course, here locally in the Tampa Bay community, and there's been a news story that's been making some attention about a sheriff in the area. AP has a story that Florida sheriff has been sued over program that predicts crime. And it's out of Dade City, Florida. The AP story says U.S. Representative Matt Gaetz has called on Florida's governor to remove a sheriff who was sued this week by 4 residents claiming an intelligence program run by the top cops agency violated their constitutional rights. In a tweet on Thursday, Gaetz, a congressman from the Florida Panhandle, said that Governor DeSantis has the authority to remove Pasco County Sheriff Chris Nocco and should consider doing so. I don't care that this is being done by a GOP sheriff, Gaetz said in a tweet. It's awful to harass citizens because you think they may commit crimes, hoping to make their lives miserable. The intelligence program run by the Pasco County Sheriff's Office uses arrest histories and information from police reports to determine which residents are most likely to break the law. Deputies then make repeated visits to those individuals' homes, even when there is no warrant or evidence of a crime, according to an investigation by the Tampa Bay Times. Detective Baeza, have any thoughts on this?
Yes, I do. I mean, I don't typically agree with much of what Matt Gaetz says, but this I agree with. I think that the sheriff should step down. I think this is harassment of people in his citizens in his county, and I don't think it's a way at all to predict crime. This theory that this is a way to predict crime and to stop crime is insane. It is not a way to predict crime. What it is a way to harass people, especially people who have committed nonviolent crimes, and people who may have committed a violent crime but are not going to commit a crime again. This is just an easy little program that he can put out there and say that he's doing this and he's trying to help the people of the county. In the meantime, violent crime in Pasco County has risen. So he hasn't done anything to address violent crime in Pasco County. What he's doing is harassing innocent citizens. And what this proves to me is that the sheriff has no idea whatsoever how to attack crime in Pasco County.
So have you looked into the details of this program? Are they using a software too, or what are they doing to do this pre-crime investigation?
In the end, it's some person is putting people on a list. So in the end, it's a human being determining that somebody else is going to be on a list. And they are using a lot of manpower, a lot of time to go visit these people at their homes, whether it's a violent crime or not, whether it's a victimless crime or not. They still do it. They go and waste their time. My first question would be, how many open violent crime warrants do you have in Pasco County, Sheriff? How many do you have? Because you're spending a lot of time on harassing people who are not doing anything. And how much time are you spending on catching actual real bad guys who have violated other people's rights and have harmed other people? That's a question I would have for him.
Right. So when you look at a story like this, does this seem like something that would have helped you in some of the cases that you were trying to, solve crime with when you were a detective?
No, not at all. In fact, it's a ridiculous program that is a waste of manpower. It's a waste of time and money and effort, a waste of the taxpayers' money. And it's just a way to harass taxpayers. It proves to me that the sheriff has no idea how to solve crime or how to prevent crime from happening again. The way you do that is you do it with the model that they first used in New York City back in the mid-90s when they dropped crime a great deal. And that would be what they call the CompStat program. But basically what it is holding people accountable, commanders, and basically putting police officers, or sheriffs in this case, at locations and areas where there are crime hotspots currently going on. Not targeting individuals, you're targeting areas where crime is going on. So therefore, you're affecting crime. In this case, he's causing more crime. They're citing people for having bricks in their yard or having their yard too long. It's uncut, or, just ridiculous violations, trying to force people to move out of the county. To me, it is a complete and utter waste of money, of taxpayer money, and the taxpayers deserve much better than this. They deserve somebody who at least can go and say, I know I have a program and I'm going to target crime. Whether you have a big program or not, even if you have something, say, okay, we're going to prioritize warrants for people who have committed violent crimes against others. And let's do that. Spend time on doing that. That you would put people in jail who have committed crimes against others, and you would keep them in jail because they're out now and they're out on warrants and they're supposed to be in jail. So that, in effect, just that alone would drop your crime rate, by some measure.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this kind of stuff, it doesn't seem to be something that should be acceptable in America, where you're supposed to have some kind of, protection against these kind of, I guess, how would this fall in? Is there anything that we can learn from? I guess the Constitution would be the federal situation, but in our Florida law, how does it relate to that? Do you know anything about that?
No, our Florida Constitution protects us against search and seizure, just as the United States Constitution protects against that. Our Florida Constitution in the Declaration of Rights protects us against search and seizure, illegal search and seizure, warrantless arrests. We are not, the people of Florida, they don't have to put up with the harassment from a bully who has some bogus program that he wants to make it so that he can get reelected. What I find in Florida is a lot of these sheriffs, all they want to do is make commercials about locking your car up and making sure you lock the door, but they get their name out there. They put their names on the squad cars. They put their name everywhere. So, it's all about getting reelected. And this particular sheriff has no great police work experience, has no great experience working in large police departments. This sheriff that we're talking about in Pasco County is basically a politically related sheriff. He has political connections, and that's the only reason he's a sheriff right now.
Mm-hmm. We're speaking with Detective John Baeza, retired detective for the NYPD, and also worked in Florida as well as a police officer. We're going to continue to look at some of the news related to law enforcement stories, and at some point we're going to get into the findings of Detective Baeza's work investigating the George Floyd death. This is something that's going to be going to trial here soon, and Detective Baeza is always someone who's relentlessly trying to find the facts and not get swept up one way or another. And he meticulously does experiments to try to make the best information available for folks who are wondering about the truth of these matters. That's the kind of detective work we need. That's the kind of stuff we need to promote in our culture, rather than getting caught up in partisanship and tribalism over these matters. If you have a question for John Baeza, you can call in at 727-587-1040. 727-587-1040. We're live and we'll return in just a moment on A Neighbor's Choice.
David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck on a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski, your host. We're live broadcasting around Florida as well as worldwide on our podcast and video stream. We have with us our friend, Detective John Baeza, who is in Florida. And we're looking at some of the stories related to what's going on with the way we enforce crime laws. And I want to turn now to a national story for you. And we might carry this on for 2 segments here to look at this if we need, because there's a lot here. But it's a story by James Bovard, who is a guest on my program as a journalist. He's a very great writer, and he writes for a lot of outlets. But this one's in the AmericanConservative.com. It says, will FBI chat send conservatives to prison? With no requirements to record interviews and the potential to prosecute based on false statements, the FBI has a terrifying amount of power over citizens. So I just want to let you jump into this issue. I don't know if you got to see this story, Detective Baeza, but any thoughts on this issue as it starts to affect Trump voters?
Yeah, Dave, I have a lot of thoughts on the issue, and I did see Bovard's article, and I thought it was very well put. The FBI does have a scary amount of power They're one of the only agencies that if you lie to them, you can be arrested. When I worked as a detective for the New York City Police Department, there were plenty of people that lied to me. Was I able to arrest them for that? No. And that's the way it should be. Also, the Federal Bureau of Investigation is purposely staying away from video and audio taping interviews, because they would not be good if they were seen in a courtroom, because the way that they interview people is through not only through trickery and deceit, but also through suggestion, through giving people the answers, through just mere basically fear. Also, the FBI has a lot, people think they have a lot of power. Now, the truth about it is this: the FBI is unconstitutional. We only have 3 crimes in the Constitution. You got piracy, treason, and counterfeiting. So there's no really place for the FBI. But that's all good, and we say that, but we're still stuck with them. What we need to do is we need to have a regulation. We need to have legislation. And I hate to call for more legislation because that's what I don't like, but we need to, they should be videotaped and audio taped. To me that they are very scared and are very worried that their interviews will be thrown out of court. And one of the reasons I will tell you listeners are, one thing is everybody thinks FBI agents are the cream of the crop and the top of the law enforcement system, when it is just, quite frankly, just the opposite. FBI agents have no mandate to investigate street robberies, street crimes, domestic violence, sex crimes, murder, unless it's on federal property. So they do very, very rarely do they do any kind of real investigative work. They do bank robberies and stuff like that, but they don't have that type of expertise when it comes to criminal matters. So they definitely don't want their interviews being seen, because they're very poor interviews. I've seen their interviews before, and they're not very good at all.
And is that across the board with what you've seen, or just with their interviews?
That's across.
Yeah,
that's across the board, Dave. That's across the board from many federal agencies. I really have very little respect for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I've worked with them. I've worked with their profiling unit, and it has left me with this feeling that the FBI is not at the top of the food chain, but typically they're at the bottom of the food chain when it comes to law enforcement. Federal agents, while they have this amazing amount of power, they really don't do the kind of work that a regular detective does. So therefore, they don't have the experience in interview and interrogation that are typical, not only detective, but a typical police officer would have.
Yeah, in the story, James Bovard says FBI agents have an easier task than the cardinal, who said, if you give me 6 lines written by the hand of the most honest of men, I will find something in them which will hang him. It says the FBI, they can fabricate the sentences they use to legally destroy their targets. The legal fate of individuals who talk to FBI agents does not depend on what they said. Instead, it hinges on what FBI agents claim they said. FBI agents don't have to read a Miranda warning to people whose lives may be destroyed as a result of an interview. So they don't have to have evidence of the lie, right? It could be just not true.
Well, the FBI, yeah. I mean, this is something. First of all, the Miranda warnings. I don't know where. I like James Oliver, but I don't know where he gets that from, because if you have somebody who's in custody and you're questioning them, whether you're federal, whether you're local or state, you have to read them the Miranda warnings. So, James may be talking about some other incident, but typically what happens is the FBI fills out 302s. That's their report that they fill out. And whatever they say in the 302 is as good as what is said in the interview. Right? Basically, what they say is we take contemporaneous notes, we type it up in a 302 form, which is like an investigative form, and whatever that form says, that's what the suspect said. So they type up whatever they want. Whereas many now across the nation, it's happening more and more, of course, with body cams and everything else. Many investigators are recorded, and therefore, they have to be very, very careful about what they do and make sure that it's done correctly.
Right. That's very interesting. And I think a lot of folks may not know about some of the things that you're suggesting and the reality of how these things are done at the federal level. So it may be informative for folks as we continue to unpack this story. We'll take a quick little break to hear the news, and we'll return in just a moment with Detective John Baeza, retired NYPD detective, someone who worked with Special Victims Unit, has published papers around different journals about criminal procedures and police conduct, proper conduct, and different things like that. So we're going to continue to get into some of the other stories related to law enforcement in the headlines today. Back in just a moment.
Ronald Reagan would turn over in his grave if he saw what's going on today.
Crazy things are happening.
You cannot be afraid. You've got to stand up for what you believe is right.
But one thing is for sure.
You can't trust anybody.
For talk, news, and information, you can count on us.
Enough is enough. I mean, I almost blew a gasket.
Good for the country.
I know what I'm talking about. A lot of wackos out there.
Your connection to talk about it. The all-new News Talk 1040, WHBO.
President Biden visited a minority-owned flooring business in suburban Philadelphia today to show how his nearly $2 trillion COVID-19 relief package can help small businesses.
Is there anything else we can be doing? You have how many employees at your peak?
At our peak, we're at about 23 people. Our peak is summertime. We do a lot of schoolwork. Yeah. And so that's when we get our big boost.
Vice President Harris and her husband, second gentleman Doug Emhoff, made stops at small businesses in Colorado. The White House says more than 16 million COVID-19 vaccine doses are on their way to states and other jurisdictions this week, up by more than 200,000 from what was sent last week. The fire department in Ontario, California, says a large amount of fireworks is blamed for an explosion and house fire. A neighbor says it felt like an earthquake. Wall Street tapped the brakes, closing mostly lower today as investors await word from the Fed tomorrow. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski here with my friend Detective John Baeza, a retired detective from NYPD and someone who is an expert witness for different trials. So, Detective Baeza, I wanted to ask you in follow-up to the story that Jim Bovard was talking about in regards to the FBI research and investigation into the January 6th Trump protests, which turned into a riot. What was your overall take on what you've seen so far from that investigation? I know they had the pipe bomb situation. They're trying to track down where that came from or whatever. Any thoughts on what you've read about overall where that's at?
You know what? All right, now I don't know. I know that I think there's a really there's a terrible investigation that has gone on about the Capitol Police officer that supposedly sustained injuries during that January 6th event. And there has also been no charges brought against Capitol Police officer for shooting an innocent, unarmed woman, Ashley Babbitt. And I thought that was just terrible the way they handled that. And you know, the way they're handling everything now is, you know, I don't have the inside scoop on it, the inside story on it, but I do know if the FBI wants to get you, they are going to get you. I mean, I don't know if there's a book or it's a saying out there, but you basically, once you walk outside your house, you commit like 3 felonies a day, even if you're a law-abiding citizen. There's always something that the FBI can twist or turn against you. And obviously we know it's not recorded. So, and who do people believe in a trial? Usually the jury will believe the FBI agent because, you know, they have such this aura about them. So I think that's a problem, and that's going to be a problem that people are going to go up against when they are investigated.
Yeah, conservative author. This is in James' article at the American Conservative. The title of the article is "Will FBI Chat Send Conservatives to Prison?" And he opens with the tweet from Candace Owens on March 3rd. Says, "About 10 of my friends who attended Trump's speech but did not go to the Capitol building thereafter have had the FBI turn up at their door to ask them why they went to D.C. Our FBI is trying to scare conservatives against ever gathering in the future." And the article goes on to say that the agency is conducting 2,000 domestic terrorism investigations surrounding the January 6th situation. Do you think that's a warranted thing to do?
No, I don't think it's in the face of what I saw. I don't think it's warranted that they do this. I think there's a lot of wasted time, money, and effort. I think that what should be investigated is any deaths or violent crime that were committed. I just think that you know, politically, and it depends on what it. To me, it doesn't matter who the president is at the time. The FBI is always going to be an enemy of the people. And they have been since Ruby Ridge, Waco, ATF has also been involved with that. And whoever has power can use the FBI as an arm to go out and do their dirty work or whatever they want done. I've always felt that, and I still feel that way. And again, I told you before, I have little to no respect for the FBI and for the investigations that they do and that they have done. I've just been, they've just failed just too often.
Apparently, I guess from your framework, then Donald Trump really didn't have power over the FBI, because if they're used by the powerful, then they were used on him and his buddies as the entire time he was running for office and in office and out of office. And that, so I don't know, I guess they have a preference for who they like to be in the seat of power at this point. But I mean, they've been doing this with Malcolm X, right? And Martin Luther King and other folks have been the target of political investigations too, right?
Sure. John Lennon of the Beatles. You know, I mean, John Lennon they had a whole file on him, but you're talking about then, back when you had, and you still have this kind of power. You have a power like with J. Edgar Hoover. I mean, my gosh, the power that he had files on everybody. And they do have files on people. They do have files on a lot of people, and they still do. And, you know, we see this over and over again throughout the year. So, like I say, I don't know particularly who runs the FBI from the top down and how they run it and what their political motivations are. Sometimes you can see it in their investigation, sometimes you can't. But no matter what, it's always bad. But nothing ever good comes from an FBI investigation. I can tell you that much.
Let's look at this story here in the, turning to the story of the George Floyd the trial. And you have this situation. The headline in Los Angeles Times says, defense in Derek Chauvin's trial fears impact of the $27 million settlement. And it says an attorney for a former Minneapolis police officer charged in George Floyd's death asked the judge Monday to delay the trial, saying the announcement of a $27 million settlement for Floyd's family could make a fair trial impossible. Defense attorney Eric Nelson also raised the possibility of renewing his previously unsuccessful motion to move Derek Chauvin's trial to another city. I am gravely concerned with the news that broke on Friday, Nelson said, adding that the announcement has incredible potential to taint the jury pool. Any thoughts on that particular story here?
Yeah, I think it'll taint the jury pool. I think the jury pool is already tainted. I don't think there's anybody that hasn't seen that video out there. And I think that the optics of that video are horrible when you have Chauvin's knee on Floyd's neck for, the 8 or 9 minutes, whatever it was. But again, that was something else that we talked about before, that I am right now I'm doing reconstructions, and I have done a couple of reconstructions, which is basically a reenactment of that, where I've had a knee on my neck in that position, or in that estimated position, as accurate as possible. I have done that 12 times, 9 times I videoed it, all more than 10 minutes, and I've never had any problems at all with my clarity of thinking, with losing any type of consciousness or anything like that. Everything has been okay with that. I've had a lot of uncomfortableness, claustrophobic feeling because you can't move anything, only your eyes and your mouth. But I will tell you that is that there has never been a case that has been shown that has caused somebody's death by just what most medical examiners are calling the carotid sinus reflex or carotid sinus syndrome. They're saying one area of the neck, if you touch it or if you massage it enough, you can cause the blood pressure to fall and the heart to go into a heart attack. But that has never really been proven at all. And what I decided to do is do experiments to duplicate it as best I could to the George Floyd and Derek Chauvin incident. And so far, what I've come up with is that I have not been affected, and I've been under the knee for more than 10 minutes and 3 video recorded events. And I will be doing another one later this week in order to get the angle of the knee correct on my neck. It's important to get that correct. But I have had nothing but clarity of mind during the whole thing. Uncomfortableness, yes. Claustrophobia, I'm claustrophobic, so the feeling that I couldn't get up and that I'm not moving and so forth, yes. Did my breathing go up a bit? Yes. My heart rate, probably. But it did not, obviously I'm here talking to you, but when I was doing it, I talked the whole time, so my clarity of thinking was there. Everything was fine that way. So I'm continuing to do that to see if that actually could have killed Floyd. Now, having said that, I'm not trying to take away any culpability on the part of the officers for how they handled the situation. Should have never been handled this way. Floyd should have been either placed in that car and that second door never opened, but it was, or he should have been placed on the sidewalk somewhere and get the ambulance to him as soon as possible. There was no need to put him on his chest, especially if they knew they had seen frothing out of his mouth. They thought he was high on something. It was clear from the transcripts, but they thought he was high on something. What they should have done was taken him, sat him down, against the wall like he had been originally, and then wait for the ambulance to come. He wasn't resisting in any great way, other than not wanting to go in the car. So I think that his death came at the hands of officers, but I don't think the knee hold right now. I will tell you, I don't think the knee hold is lethal. But that's just me right now. There are plenty of people who are professionals that would disagree with me, but not one of them has had somebody's knee on the neck for over 10 minutes. I have.
And you did not feel like it was a lethal hold, is what you're saying?
No, I do not. And we'll continue to find out as we go along one more time, I think, just to get the angle down a little bit better. But I don't believe it is a lethal hold. And I don't think it's ever been proven in the literature or the science that it is, that it's a lethal hold at all.
So what do you think was the cause of death? Is that something you've looked into as well then? Or?
You know, it's out of my area of expertise, but if I was to hazard a guess as a detective, I would say that, you know, he had some arteries to his heart that were occluded by 85 to 95%. I would think maybe a heart attack. He might have had a heart attack. And also the drugs in his system didn't help. Everything altogether did not help to, it did not work in George Floyd's favor. It worked against him very much so, and against his life.
So you do think that the officers are culpable for something, but you just don't think it was a murder? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, that's what I'm suggesting now. That I would think. I think they're culpable, and they should have never done that. But I do believe that at this point, I don't think that neck hold, which looked really bad, and I originally thought that was really bad, and that's the reason. But when I've done it and reconstructed it and read the literature on it, I don't believe that neck hold for 9-10 minutes. I don't care how long. I don't believe it's fatal. So I don't believe that Chauvin killed him with his knee. I believe there's a combination of, again, having him on the ground. He was under the influence, so forth. I think they could have done something else, but I don't think that neck hold killed him.
A YouTube viewer on our video stream says, really intrigued by Detective Baeza's commentary. Another says they released another video of Floyd getting arrested in 2019. It appears that he tried to swallow a bag of pills or something. And
yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah,
I saw that, and I saw the video of that as well. He acted very similarly to the way he did this time. But I only saw a brief video, so I didn't see the entire thing. The video of this event, the Floyd Chauvin event, I looked at both body cam and cell phone footage probably at least 100 times, so I took a good look at it. But this one that came to event that came to light recently, I've just recently seen it. But it's clear that Floyd was a drug user, and this did not help his health at all. Not necessarily going to his character, but going to his health. It did not help him very, very much. And nobody knew that he had these occluded arteries, but they found out certainly at autopsy that he did.
So what would have been, because you've talked about nonviolent communication and how to de-escalate a situation. I know people can say it's always easy to comment after the fact, but given the fact that you were in life or death situations, I feel it's a little bit more appropriate to ask someone like yourself, Detective Baeza, what you would have done perhaps as a way to de-escalate the situation instead of it turning into the horrible death that it was.
No, first of all, I wouldn't have acted. The cops acted very robotic, if you will. And I would have been more human. I would have called him George when I found out what his name was. I would have called him George. I see that. I'm looking at the transcript. I just finished looking at a transcript now of everything that was said. And not one time did they ever call him George or, it was very, very robotic, very militaristic type language that the police use. And that is definitely not the way to de-escalate something. You need to You need to be able to talk to somebody. Call them by their first name. Say, listen, this is what we need you to do. Okay, if you know the guy is under the influence of drugs, he's got to go to the hospital at some point anyway. If you can put him off to if he's in handcuffs, he's not running away anywhere, you can put him off to the side of the road and sit him down. Why not do that? Why do you have to shove him into a police car if you can't get him in there, if he's going to the hospital anyway? I don't see it as necessary. Again, there is a militaristic attitude in the police force, and I see that with the way things are going. In fact, the gun was pulled out initially. One of the officers had their gun out before George Floyd was handcuffed in the car. Somebody had pointed a gun at him, but there was no gun. There was no mention of a gun or anything. So I don't know why an officer would even have his gun out before them. But this is typical to what you have nowadays.
Yeah.
Shoot first, ask questions later, and that's kind of the attitude to today's law enforcement.
I just have a problem with the idea that you have to get to that kind of situation over the allegation of a fake $20 bill. We have a United States government that prints trillions of dollars out of thin air and debases our purchasing power every day, and nobody bats an eye as they ruin the lives of millions and millions of Americans by legalized counterfeiting. This gentleman loses his life, and I don't care, the background of whatever. You don't have someone in a situation where they could lose their life over a $20 bill. There seems to be that a sane society could deal with that in a better way. Not that there's no consequences, but we have such an upside down system where someone like George Floyd, in order to survive, with this, from what I understand, his business was affected by the government shutting down the businesses because of COVID. And then he's got the Federal Reserve debasing his purchasing power his whole life. And then, so he tries to play the same game and he ends up dying. I find that at the big picture level, a little bit bigger picture level, I find that completely ridiculous and disgusting,
Well, I don't even know to this day if they even can prove or not that he committed the crime. I don't know that he did that.
Right.
I have no idea that was even proven. And one thing we know is he didn't get anything of value from the store for it, because they just took the money and told him to leave, I guess. And that was the indication that I got, was that he didn't even get anything for his money. If it was fake money, his counterfeit money is counterfeit money. He didn't get anything for it. So yeah, it was clearly out of whack for the crime that was committed to the end. I mean, the man died, and he didn't need to die.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the point. And my point on the neck hold is not to exonerate Chauvin of all guilt in this death, but it is just to point out that we want to find out definitely for sure if this neck hold, knee on the neck, was an actual lethal hold. So that's kind of what I do. I try to look for the truth. That's all, just the truth.
Let's take a quick break and return with Detective John Baeza. We have some comments on our YouTube stream we'll try to get to in just a moment. You can also call in at 727-587-1040, 727-587-1040, or drop us a comment online on David Granosky, the YouTube channel. We'll get to it in just a second.
Hello, this is David Granosky with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in Southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers,
Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
We return now on A Neighbor's Choice with Detective John Baeza, and we're talking about the case of the death of George Floyd and what's going on with that trial that's going to be going on soon. And I want to get to some of the comments here. Ophelia says, I had my brother kneel on me as an experiment and couldn't breathe at all. She also said it's impossible to know if the bill was counterfeit. And another Magic Marker says, in Kentucky, in a traffic stop, a guy told the cop he had CCDW and the cops shot him dead. Both cops have been fired. I'm not familiar with that story. Any thoughts on those comments?
I mean, the first one, you can tell if a bill is counterfeit. That's not hard to do. In the George Floyd case. The other thing is, I don't know where she was talking about the knee was. If the knee was on her back, yes, I agree. A knee on somebody's back I've done this experiment myself, and I could only last with a 220-pound male on my back. I could only last about 2.5 minutes before I had to tap out, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. So that's definitely, I think I would consider that a fatal type hold where you put your pressure on his back. But looking at the body cam footage, very close up, you can see that he doesn't have sustained pressure on his back. He does on his lower buttocks and his upper thigh area, but that's not, that doesn't go to, to his breathing. So it was, it all depends on where the pressure is on your back,
Yeah, but what's it going to take? We're almost out of time, but what's it going to take to really change the culture of the way we're doing, the enforcement of these laws, so that we can have a lot more, unity in our communities?
Dave, I've always told you this before. I'm kind of a radical on this issue. I'd like to go to privatization of police forces. I believe it is possible, and a lot of people don't think so, but I believe it is. But at the very least, there has to be some sort of new training nationwide for police officers. Maybe there needs to be a year academy. Maybe you have to go through 2-year academy, and have much more emphasis put on de-escalation, talking to people, and being able to use your voice as a way to get things done instead of your gun or force, And right now we have a very militaristic police force across the United States. We really have to remove that as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. And it's a tough situation, but we need to do it. It's got to come from the top down, and it's got to be. We're just going to have to retrain people differently.
Mm-hmm. And then also get rid of all the bad laws that put police in harm's way for no reason.
That's it. Just like with the guy at Staten Island, the Eric Garner. That was a Lucy cigarette, an untaxed cigarette, and it's ridiculous for even that to have gone to that far, just like this incident.
The Ophelia listener said, I meant it's hard to tell if George knew it was counterfeit. He might have just been passed a bad bill unbeknownst to him. So that's a point.
That's always possible. We don't know.
You're right. That could happen to anybody.
Ophelia is right. We don't know. She is correct.
Right. She asked, where can I find the video you made that explaining, with your experiment of the hole that you had?
I haven't published it yet publicly. I haven't put it out publicly yet. But when I do, I can guarantee you that I will provide it to you, Dave Gronowski, so that you can have it. And if you feel like putting it up somewhere, you can. That's as soon as I got to get I have to get the experiment done correctly, the reconstruction done correctly. Once I do that as best I can, then I'll release it. I have no problem.
But Detective John Baeza, it's always great talking to you. Always learn a lot, and I know our listeners really enjoy it. Lots of comments and others that we didn't get to. And so we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Dave.
Very good. And that's it for A Neighbor's Choice, folks. You can email me hello@aneighborschoice.com. That's hello@aneighborschoice.com if you have a comment or feedback or guest suggestion or anything else. Shoot us an email, hello@aneighborschoice.com. I'm David Gronowski. Godspeed.